Today, we're pleased to have Diana Bell with us. She is Racial Justice Director at the YWCA here in Wheeling. She's also the founder of the African American Jubilee. And she's with us today to present, as you can see, a look at our past, a glimpse of our future. Please welcome Diana Bell.
Please enjoy your lunch and eat, drink, and be merry a little bit. We're going to have a little talk. It's going to be not a lecture, I hope, but a little talk. I'm going to start out with some national things, and then hopefully we're going to move on to a little bit about Wheeling in the second half. I won't read all this, but what the question is the celebration of Black History Month, does it negate the need to talk about the history of African Americans all year long? In my opinion, it does not. I mean, it's nice that we have Black History Month, which was created by Dr. Carter Woodson, a West Virginian, who was also an author and an activist, who said, you know, we need to know more about the African American history, not only in the state of West Virginia, but it became national. It used to be called Negro History Week, and then it was expanded to include a whole month. Now, if you go down to the second paragraph, it says, we discussed how they used to treat Black people back then, without realizing that then age created a foundation of society in which we live. You all know the statement, those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. It's not always a good past. So if we don't remember the things that came before, we can make some of the same mistakes. And also, as we go along, we'll find out that things that happened in our past directly impact what's going on right now. Let's see how much you know. We'll go through this rather quickly because I think a lot of people know these are pretty basic questions. Who escaped slavery in Maryland to become the conductor of the Underground Railroad? We'll just sing out. Harriet Tubman. What state was the first to have more blacks than whites? That was a little bit. South Carolina. South Carolina. Which was the first state to abolish slavery? Belmont, Connecticut. 1886, I believe. What agricultural machine invented in 1794 increased the need for slave labor in the South? Now, it increased the need for slave labor, but what would that be? What city did the first African American newspaper, the Freedmen's Journal, begin publishing in 1827? New York City. What year did the first enslaved Africans arrive in North America? 1526. Very important. Which amendment in time Iran Lincoln outlawed slavery? The 13th, and there was a few more that dealt directly with civil rights issues after the 13th. Which African American athlete won 4 gold medals in the Berlin Olympics? And what year did the Supreme Court declare segregation of public schools to be unconstitutional? 1954. And who wrote Injustice Anywhere as a threat to justice everywhere? See, you know some stuff. You know the basics. All of those things are landmark things, and they're all relevant. They're all important. Segregation in 54 impacted the whole country. There was talk about separate but equal. That was tried first with Plessy versus Ferguson. Didn't work out too well because separate and equal, it was never equal. Even though the African Americans had their own teachers and their own schools and everything, the treatment was never equal. So the education level never came up to where it should have been, never equaled out the playing field. So segregation was a big issue. Because I work for the YWCA, I thought we would look at pioneering African American women. And some of those women you might recognize. And some you might not. So I thought we'd take a look at a few. Anybody know Bessie Coleman? I have aviator up there. World's first licensed black aviator. Very first one, Bessie Coleman. Okay. She went World War I. She was interested in aviation, but because of a lot of racism and different attitudes, not only racist attitudes, but sexist attitudes against women, She chose to go to France, as did a lot of African Americans in that period of history, because it was more liberal and you could get more done. She went to France and learned how to fly. She wanted to open a flying school for African Americans, and she died before it happened. However, she still honored with a flyover every year on the anniversary of her death. Anybody know Kathy Williams? What's Kathy Williams? Okay, she was the daughter of a slave woman and freed black. She's the first documented African American woman to enlist and serve in the U.S. Army. But guess where she served at? She was in the Civil War. She was Wanderson Cook. She went on to become the only female ever to be in the Buffalo Soldiers. She successfully, and if you read what I put it, following what must have been a very hasty physical examination, she went on to become the first female African American. Well, Buffalo Soldiers, we know. And anything you want more in depth, please tell me, because we're trying to put this into an hour. She actually went, she served and was very active with the Buffalo Soldiers until, of course, they found out she was a girl. So, Shirley Chisholm. If she had her way, she would have been the first African American president and not Barack Obama. She's lobbied unsuccessfully for the nomination in 1972, but she was also very active in Congress and throughout the federal government. She made a lot of changes for a lot of people. 7 terms, and that's what I just said. Her campaign slogan was unbought and unbossed, because she said nobody could tell her what to do, and that she, she was not paid off by the other campaign folks. This one's Rosa Parks. Almost everybody knows who Rosa Parks is, and the reason I gave you some of these folks, the other folks that you hadn't heard of, because there is just so much history, it would take us days and days and days, just like it would be for American history. However, most of us weren't ever taught about these folks, especially as it pertains to African American history. That should be into the school system. Yes, sir.
There was a woman named Claudia Colvin who refused to give up her seat on the bus before Rosa Parks.
Rosa Parks, that's correct. Actually, Rosa Parks was the 6th person who had done this. You can go ahead. No, stay right here. She was the 6th one. And it was thought because of her influence, and her husband, I believe, was the secretary of the NAACP. And she was involved with the NAACP. Other folks who refused to give up their seats were, some of them were extremely poor, and there was a couple teenagers that they weren't too sure about how it would go over with the public. So as often happens, they decided to use Rosa Parks as the best example. I mean, the other ladies were, and you're correct, the other ladies were arrested also, but she spurred it on, and it was a concerted effort. This wasn't an accident. Her not giving up her seat wasn't on purpose. But what happened afterwards was a concerted effort to bring attention to this happening regularly. It wouldn't matter how tired you were or whatever, you had to get up and let someone else sit down. And the person that wanted to sit there, she was actually sitting in the first row of the colored section. Because there was a colored section, a white section. There was little place cards on the back of the seat they would put the color. So what they would do is if more white people got on, they would just take the colored placard out and move it back further. She was actually in the correct section, but because there wasn't any more room on the bus and this white fellow wanted to sit down, they moved the placard. Yes?
If you weren't allowed to move, black people weren't allowed to move it themselves.
Right, no, they
The
couldn't.
bus driver had to move
He would
it.
go
But
back.
if a white person got on and you were sitting in that first seat, you were told to get up so they could move it back and let that person sit down.
That's exactly
They were not to stand. I'm from the
Right. White people were not allowed, it's no pain for the blacks to stand it. But she made a brave and heroic decision that cost her much in life. We forget about. She went through a lot of trials and tribulations. The bus boycott lasted for more than a year. And it finally, I believe, the economic impact, because if you can imagine back then, most of the day workers and folks who did a lot of the labor work rode the bus, the majority of them African American. That hit the economy pretty hard when they decided to boycott. And the boycott was one of the most successful boycotts that proved that you can make a change to the boycott. Mayfield Johnson, this is part of our future. Anybody know who she is? Karen? How'd you get that from? You need to get that from. Technical difficulty. Okay, she was an African American physician. She became the first woman of recent African ancestry to travel in space when she went into orbit aboard the space shuttle. So she was the first black woman in space, not the first black person, but woman. Okay. Davy Bates, any clues?
In relation to Norman Bates? Bates Motel?
She was the leader who backed up the Little Rock Nine. They, of course, as you know, were the kids who integrated during segregation. She was, go ahead, one more. She took care of the students, and she really went with them, and you have to have a mentor. You can't imagine those little kids going to school by themselves, so she was really right there in the forefront. After this event happened, and while it was going on, they actually burned a reformatory that had, I think, 25 black male students, and there's a fight on now to get that investigated. In retaliation for these kids going to school, it was a reformatory, it was set on fire, and all those kids died, and it's never been answered for. But there was things going on like that all around the country. This happened to be in Arkansas, that this happened right after that. So there was a lot of injustice. And we're going to talk about some of that. There's lots of dark times in our history, and that's just as important to remember as the good times. If you're of Jewish descent, one of the things you want to talk about is remembering the Holocaust. Well, we had a Holocaust and it is historic, just the same. And a lot of times, African Americans are told, well, slavery happened a long time ago. Why are you worried about it? Well, because of the effects of slavery are still in effect today. And the things that happened in slavery are still affecting my life today, right now. So it's just as important to me as anybody else's. The Native Americans have their own Holocaust, the Jewish people, as I mentioned. So we all have those dark and unfortunate times. But if we have to look at them, figure out why they happen so they don't happen again. This is all my personal opinion. This is the Supreme Court separate but equal that we talked about. That satisfied the amendment, but it gave sanction to Jim Crow. Now, Jim Crow segregation laws were the ones that set up the system whereby I could have a colored side and a white side. We talked about it in the bus. Water fountains, restrooms, hotels, things like that. I always say African Americans invented bed and breakfast because we couldn't go to a hotel instead. We had to go to someone in the neighborhood that you knew, Miss So-and-so puts up people when you're traveling, things like that. And I'm in my 50s, and I will say that when I went to the South when I was about 12, 13 years old, I still couldn't go to hotels. I still had to go to the back door to get food. So it's in my recent history that this stuff is going on. But Jim Crow was actually the law. I mean, that was the law of the land that you could not do these things. Next year. Anybody heard of the Tuskegee experiment? Most of us are of age, you should have heard of it. It was a 40-year-long experience in which 399 African American men infected with syphilis near Tuskegee, Alabama, were denied treatment. This didn't come to light until 1972. When it was fine. Now this had went on all these years. These men were denied any treatment, even after the advent of penicillin, which was the cure for this. The deciding factor, they said, the reason that this was done was an experiment to see if syphilis affected black people differently than white people. That's what they said it was for. These folks, I don't know, Janine, maybe you know, were they compensated ever for this?
I know some of their families have been compensated lately.
Lately, 2009.
Yeah.
Okay, but I know that they had tried to get compensated for this because these men were allowed to suffer and die, and then they were autopsied to find out the results and ravages that syphilis would have on their body after a while. This was sanctioned by the White House and the Surgeon General. So it wasn't, people knew about it, it just didn't come to light until 1972. 14-year-old Wetzel was kidnapped, brutally beaten, shot, and dumped in the Tallahatchie River in West Mississippi for allegedly whistling at a white woman. Perfect case. He got the most press probably because he was 14. His friends who were with him said he did not whistle at the woman, but it just went on. But this young man was killed, tortured, and beaten because of, even if he didn't do it, but whatever he did, it involved, him making a stupid remark that a teenager would do, or even if he whistled, whatever it was. And he was killed for this. This is typical. There was a lynching period that happened in our history that went on for many, many years, and some people say still continues to this day. That's why if you heard about the Gen 6 and the hanging of nooses around, and people say, why do you get so upset? It's just a rope. It's more than just a rope, but that's an instrument of torture for a group of people. It's like the swastika, and I make that reference so people can understand. It's like the swastika to Jewish people. For me, it's like seeing that stain. It's a symbol of hate and torture. Emmett's mother decided to have his body fully viewed, and if you've ever seen the pictures, it was horrific what they did to this. It's a baby. He's a baby.
I think that was in 1955 in the newspaper. Said magazine showed him tied and being pulled out of a pond.
Right.
But he was a northern child who was down on summer break. A lot of the black parents sent their children down to spend with grandparents in the summer, and that's why he was down. And he didn't know that he couldn't speak to this girl.
Right, he didn't know that, and it was the white store owner's wife who, I believe, later on recanted and said he never had really done anything, but she lived with her whole life. I don't think anybody has ever tried to convict him for that, as many other ones.
They've had some investigations into it, but they couldn't get the people who knew
to tell. It's officially closed now. So, a lot of the cases, civil rights cases, are still open. But this is one of the ones that was closed where they never had any information on what was done to him. He became a poster child, if you will, for the movement a lot because of the horrific things that were done. But believe me when I tell you, this was a typical treatment. A lot of African American men, if you look at, they would lynch them, castrate them, burn them, do all these different things, and take postcards. And if you look at the postcards from the era, you would see picnic baskets and children and families. It was a very festive occasion when you would catch the African American, for whatever real or imagined offense. And it was a real party. And you would have, hence the term lynching party, because that's what they did. They actually party. Karen? We talked about Rosa Parks' support. She did her year-long boycott of the Montgomery buses. Some of the white folks in the community were instrumental in helping because they would drive and pick up the ladies to come work at their house. Now, whether or not that was for good reasons or bad, we don't know, but they did participate, so it wasn't, everybody wasn't evil and bad. Malcolm X was assassinated February 21st at the Audubon Ballroom in the heart of New York. I believe some Muslims went to jail for that, but that later on came out was, not done by insiders. This is the Bloody Sunday. This is when Martin Luther King with other leaders, they wanted to talk about bloody breaks, and they went across the bridge in Selma, Alabama. This is one a lot of us, because a lot of us are of an age in here, we've seen this on TV. We saw the fire hose and the dogs and the, police, all because folks wanted the right to vote. Similarly to the women's suffrage movement, same thing, a little bit different outcomes. I mean, as far as the women weren't attacked as much, they were some. But the African Americans were attacked, and this was a particularly bad incident, Bloody Sunday, something you can read about. Then King is assassinated. He was actually, and he was in Memphis, and he was going to talk to the sanitation workers and other folks like that about housing and different things like that. This is where he gives his I Have a Dream speech where he says they won't get there, and of course he doesn't. There are too many instances of racial unrest to document here, but for every documented, reported example, there were thousands which went unanswered and still continue to go unanswered. There's still a lot of racism. There was a young boy last month in Pittsburgh beaten by the police, and an honor student on his way home from, he wasn't at school, but he had went to study with friends, and he was beaten by the police. to the point where he had dreadlocks to the long hair. They pulled his hair out of his whole side of his head and beaten severely, and he's still in hospital for no reason. They can't give a reason why he was beaten. I'm sure a lot of you read about the fellow in New York who was shot 51 times because he went to get his wallet out of his pocket. He was in a room getting married the next day, and he went to show his ID and the police officer. Yeah, there's all kinds of things that still go on. There are good and bad in all societies, so I'm not trying to say that that all these white folks are bad and all the black people are good. What I'm trying to say is a lot of the racial things that happened way back when are still carrying over. Racial profiling and things like that are all carryovers from Jim Crow and segregation and all those sorts of things. But as a people, African Americans will not be held down. And these are some positive things that were happening. Harriet Tubman led hundreds of people to freedom in the North. They have the number, you can say anywhere from 300 to 1,000. It depends on what you read. We'll never know because, that's just something that you're not going to know. But she did do it, and they documented quite a few people. The Harlem Renaissance, that was the period in the 20s when, during the Great Migration, which happened from 18-something up until the 1970s, African Americans in droves came from the South to the North, seeking the freedoms and everything else that was going on in the North and more prevalent. The Harlem Renaissance come out of that. Oh, I have it up there. 1914 to 1918 is the Harlem Renaissance. They settled in Harlem and they began a whole series. Langston Hughes, Dora Hudson, different writers and poets and musicians. They settled in this area and they just started to revive the culture. And this is the Supreme Court decision, Brown versus Board of Education of Topeka. Thurgood Marshall was an attorney with this, and this is what dismantled the legal basis for segregation in schools and other public facilities. One of the things that they used in this court case was an experiment called black doll, white doll. Anybody know that one? I talk about that in some of my other talks. What the doctors did, they took a black doll and white doll, and they questioned several school-age children, and they had questions like, which doll was the prettiest? Which doll was good? Which doll was bad? Which doll? They go through this whole series of questions, and if it's everything that was positive was related to the white doll. Now, these are African-American children they're asking these questions of. And when they would say which doll was good, the African-American kids would pick up the white doll. Which doll was smart? They pick up the white doll. Which doll was pretty? They pick up the white doll. So they go through this whole series of questions where hardly any of the kids ever pick up the black doll. The positive is always negative. Which doll is bad? The black doll. And at the end of the question, the question is, which doll looks most like you? And if you watch, because this is on tape, you can actually see it on tape. And they invariably, they go towards the white doll and they hesitate, and then they reluctantly pick up the black doll because they put all this positive stuff on this doll here, but now I have to say this doll's like me. It's a very hard thing to watch, but it tells you about the self-esteem of the African-American children in the 50s and what they felt, and that was all learned behavior, not at home, but out in the public. Now, fast forward to 2006, a young lady named Carrie Davis does for her school project the exact same experiment. 2006, she does the same experiment, young children in New York. She does the same test. She asks the same exact question. Who thinks the results were different? They were not different. They were the same. They were basically the same. There were a few children who did identify positive things with the black doll, but for the most part, overwhelmingly, they still had that self-esteem that says white is good and black is bad. And that's in our school system, in our churches, in our neighborhoods, and everything else. That's because we didn't change that historical look that we should have taken and made the changes. We didn't change it. So we're not teaching black history in school. We're not teaching positive things, associated with African Americans. If you read the newspapers, the media, all those things, it's mostly negative connotations. It's not positive. Now, there have been changes to that because people lobbied for it,
you don't want to see. It used to be if someone robbed something and they were African American, it would say 6 foot tall African American man, robs bank. But if it was a white person, it would be a man walked into this, robbed the store, You just never was the same, but it's equaling out somewhat. I digress. I'm sorry. The March on Washington for Jobs and Freedom was a political rally that took place on August 28, 1963. That's where he delivered the speech. I'm sorry, he did the other one. He did the other one. Yeah, he did the other one. Yeah, the mountaintop speech was at the other place. But this is the I Have a Dream speech. Very, very powerful time in our history. People actually worked together. There were people all across the board of every nationality, every race, every color, every culture that participated in this march because it was coming to a head, the civil rights movement. It had a lot of momentum, and it was coming to a head. And the momentum was stopped, of course, when King was killed. Things kind of went backwards. The Million Man March, a lot of people misunderstood it, and it was in Washington, D.C. in 1995 under the tutelage of Luke Farrakhan, who was the head of the Islam folks, the Nation of Islam, and a lot of people took that as a negative thing, but it was meant to show another side of African American males. Because this time, of course, we're having, a lot of unrest. If you think back to the 90s, there was a lot of unrest and a lot of things going on. His idea, whether it worked or not, was to show that African American men were not what people were portraying them to be. And if you talk to men who went, a lot of them tell you there were no arrests, there was no damage, there was no fighting, and there's a million people, all of that. People were polite, a lot of things come out of it, and if you want to, maybe you want to talk to somebody who went to that, because it was a fabulous undertaking. From what I understand, I'm not a guy, I didn't go, but it was meant to create again that momentum that we had lost. It never really happened again because you have to have a leader to do that. And I'm sorry, Mr. Farrakhan wasn't that leader. So it would have to be a leader that could go across the board like Dr. King could or not. This is the Michigan school policy that said that race can be one of the many factors in considering colleges when selecting students. A lot of people look at, and this is a type of affirmative action, which a lot of people look at as a negative in this country, because affirmative action was developed to level the playing field. And what I mean by that, you can't have 300 years of oppression and segregation and Jim Crow and all that and expect everybody who came from that era to be equal with those who have had all of the privileges beforehand. So rulings like this was to try to remedy that. Who can tell me who benefited most from affirmative action in this country?
The white female.
The white female. White women benefited more from affirmative action than anybody African American ever did. There were more women-owned businesses started during the affirmative action years than ever before in our history. And most of them were in the construction field. So you can take that for what you want, but I think it's a little bit circumspect that there's a ruling that says minorities can now start businesses with government aid, there's tax credits and all these sort of things. But women are considered a minority too, as well as African Americans. So women's businesses grew exponentially during affirmative action before it was cut off. So a lot of people will say, well, that was just to help blacks get ahead. It was meant to bring a level playing field, because all we want is a level playing field, not preferential treatment, but a level playing field, to be up here where everybody else is. But that's who benefited most from affirmative action. But this ruling was about that.
Diane.
Yeah, sure.
The minority thing, after the civil rights, with the children of Arkansas and they got the Civil Rights Act passed, they came around with a survey and saying Negro is a bad connotation. What would you rather be? Because that was one of the people asked. And the minority has no bad connotation. Trying to put minority. And you say, I said, well, if you got Italian American, Polish American, if you're going to change it, I'd rather be African American. And I happen to be working in a job where I'd say 6 months later, with a stroke of a pen, President Johnson said it had been chosen that Negroes would be minority. And everywhere that you have a law that says Negroes, right through it and like a minority and over it. Then it came out that everybody is a minority. Chinese, Chinooks, Eskimos, Native Americans, which is Indian, Spanish surnames, white women who had Spanish surnames. And so the black male went right on back down. Later on in the affirmative action thing, I got a report that in the government, all of those different groups had gone up and been hired, and about, like say, average of 1,500 of those people in all those groups had gone up. In the government, black was the only one that had gone down by about that much, although they had raised their level. So while they said it was helping the black man, it really put him right back in the place that he was in. And so that's something I want to share with you, because not everybody knows it, because I was working in a top secret position at that time. So to give you some information on where minority comes from and how it really, with the stroke of the pen, just took the, the end out of that
Same as a separate but equal thing. It's like, oh, we're going to change it, we're going to make it better, and not always makes it better. And that is right, and that minority became the catch-all. The Civil Rights Act of 2008, that was about federal funds. That's something you can still use today. And a lot of people don't want to push that, but if you don't follow certain rules and things like that, you don't get your federal funds. And then we make tremendous strides in civil rights, but the battle continues. It's a daily battle. It's still going on, unfortunately, because there are just too many inequities. Because the playing field was never leveled. Every time in our history, if you look, that things started coming up, there was something that pushed it back down. And I don't know when the equality is ever going to come. Now there are some equalities. I'm not going to go into a store if I want to go to, but I've gone into a store in South Philly and I've been waiting on, and other white women have come in the store and they waited on them and ignored me. That kind of stuff still happens to me every day. So it's never been equally, but it's getting there. It's getting there. How about the first? This is the first American woman to be a millionaire. Anybody ever heard of Madam C.J. Walker? I see some folks raising their hand. Madam C.J. Walker, you wouldn't have Avon, Mary Kay, or none of that other stuff. Madam C.J. Walker invented a way to smoothen and straighten African American hair. And she went door to door, and then later on had women, housewives, go door to door to sell her products. And she was the first American woman to become a millionaire. Now, I said woman, not black woman, but the first American woman in our history to become a millionaire, Madam C.J. Walker. Robert Johnson, he was the first African American billionaire. He did BET, Jet Magazine, Essence Magazine. They're still publishing today, but I believe he sold almost all of his holdings. But he developed television and entertainment specifically for African Americans. There's magazines. If you're a golfer, there's golf magazines. And some people say, well, why do you need your own separate magazine? Well, why does a horse enthusiast need an equestrian magazine? It's the same thing. I want a magazine that's all about me and looks like me. I really like it. I like good housekeeping too, but I want something for me. Richard Greener, African American graduate from Harvard. He was the first American college to admit African Americans, and then he went on to be a lawyer. He went to Oakland. Karen, we need to get through these quickly so we can talk about women. The Tuskegee Airmen, they were the first African American pilots in the U.S. Armed Forces. Of course, we all know they were segregated in the Armed Forces. They had to really fight hard to be this, but they were trained in Tuskegee, maybe to make up for what they had done before. I don't have to care back to you. Okay, never mind. Anyway, they were also the most decorated unit. They were the most decorated unit, and they were also depicted as G.I. Joe action figures, but they were the most decorated unit. And they flew, I believe, more missions than any other group. So they were very dedicated Americans when they were given a chance to prove that character. Buffalo Soldiers, we talked about that. That was an all-black regiment of the U.S. Army in 1866. 20 Buffalo soldiers received the highest medal of honor for their service, the highest number of any U.S. military unit, and the oldest living Buffalo soldier died at 111 in 2005. They were given the name Buffalo soldiers by the Native Americans. This is the lore anyway, because they had never seen black people before, and they likened them to the black face of Buffalo. Thomas Jennings, he was the first African American to receive a patent, so every time you go dry clean your clothes, you have this gentleman to thank here. And I do have a list of inventors and things like that if anybody wants some of those later on. There's quite a few, there's too many to mention, including the reason why we have computers today, is due to a black man. And our light bulbs, you can invest in light bulbs, invented by Mr. Larimer. The first mayor of a major city was Carl Stokes, who's had his problems. But he was mayor of Cleveland, and the first woman mayor was Sharon Platt Dixon Kelly, Washington, D.C. We all know Colin Powell pretty much, and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The first Major League Baseball player was Jackie Robinson. The first NFL quarterback was Willie Grover. I threw this in for guys because they always want to know this stuff. The first NFL football coach is Fritz Pollard, but the first Super Bowl winning coach was the black guy, which is funny. Tony, yeah. I'm not good at sports. The first golf champion was Tiger Woods, he won the Masters. And the first NHL hockey player, Willie O'Ree, I have no idea who that is, but I looked it up. And the first African American president, Senator Walker Jr. He won the nomination and went on to become president. And that's just a few of our African American men because I did women. Wow, that was a lot. We got through a little bit of the national stuff. Any questions or comments on what we've already discussed? Okay, did anybody finish their Wheeling history quiz? Let's talk a little bit about Wheeling. Did anybody finish it? Anybody want to have a question about any of the answers? I give you the answers and say it again. The church, number one, is 4th Street United Methodist Church. Anybody go to 4th Street? 4th Street United Methodist Church was the first church that allowed African Americans to come to church services. And now is that Bruce Simpson Church, which is right around the corner. What was the first African American school? It was illegal for instruction to be given for African Americans, but what school opened? Lincoln School. How many African American doctors were in Wheeling in 1920? 4. One of them was a woman. And they could not go to the hospital and practice. They had to have a white doctor take their patient to the hospital and take care of them. They weren't allowed to do hospital. They had to do office visits. Where could you find slaves sold in? Market. Second Ward. It was called the Second Ward Market House, which is where the plaza is today. A lot of people get it confused with the no, not Center Market. But a lot of people get it confused with Center Market because we say Market Plaza, but if you're a historian like Margaret, you know that there was a market house about 10th and 11th Street. Where the plaza is. I didn't know that either. What formerly segregated women's organization integrated in 1956? YWCA. Before that, black women couldn't go into the YWCA for any of the services. Who was the African American? Who was African American? Oh no, it should be what? I'm sorry. It should be what African American was the? Oh, let me phrase that. I'm not good at all. Who was? The African American who was the oldest practicing pharmacist in West Virginia until his death in 1988. Doc White. Okay, what alumni? Lincoln High School was the first African American to graduate from Ohio Valley General Hospital School of Nursing. Ann Thomas, everybody knows Ann, first black nurse in the area. Who was the only African American biochemist for the Ohio County Health Department? I mentioned the only biochemist was Wheeling at the time. Dr. Wharton. What Wheeling Ironman went on to become the first African American councilman? Thomas. That's another football one. Oh, nobody gets number largest cultural festival, the African American Jubilee began. That was a church one in 1992. 1992. One African American entertainer performed at Wheeling Island Skating Rink in the 70s when tickets were sold for 99 cents. I was there. James Brown. James Brown. Who was the first African American from Wheeling elected to state office? Now, I said from Wheeling because he's not the first one elected to state office. Cal Hutchins. Who is the only city-owned recreation center named after? Nelson Jordan is named after Nelson Jordan. Nelson Jordan is the only city-owned recreation building in the city, and it's named after Nelson Jordan. Who was the last executive director of the Blue Triangle? That's another topic. The Blue Triangle was the segregated YWCA. It was Miss Chappelle. Cornita Chappelle Williams, she also taught at Lincoln School, very instrumental in the African American community. And one local activist, community leader, and mentor to area held teen dances in the 70s. And that's another trick. We have to be from the neighborhoods to know that's Miss Thelma Griffin. Miss Thelma Griffin was very, very active in my youth. She held dances, she did things for the kids, and when they had the March on Washington, it was Miss Thelma who got the buses from the Wheeling area to go to the March on Washington. She took a group of folks to go. And that was just a little bit. Let me give you some more about Wheeling back in the day.
Which one is the girls club?
Oh, Miss, see, I don't know much about her because I didn't grow up in Wheeling. I grew up on the island. So I have to say,
It's Nelson Jordan. I'm not from the area. Who was Nelson Jordan?
Nelson Jordan, to my understanding, was instrumental in, he did something, Janine, do you know more about Nelson Jordan? I know that he was active in the community, and one of the reasons they named him the Nelson Jordan Center, his family lived up on that hill, but he also he had been doing things on his own and all that, but he was instrumental in actually having the center built and put there, which used to have a pool.
I didn't come here until 75.
Okay. But and you know, he was just another name. Like if you're my age, Doc White, you know, Nelson Jordan, they were men who worked in the community to make the community better. But that's what they named it. And there's a plaque that tells a little bit more about it than I know. I could research him. I need to do that because I don't know a lot about Nelson Jordan. That's who he was.
Yeah, could you talk a little bit more about Doc White, too?
Well, and again, that was not before my time because I can remember going. I know that he was the oldest practicing pharmacist in Wheeling, and I know that to get his shop, which used to be on Chaplain Street, before urban renewal, Chaplain Street was where a lot of African American businesses and folks lived. It was a very thriving part of the community. And as a teenager, when I used to go there was barber shops, there was Doc White, there was stores, there was the Pythian building, there was little clubs and things like that all up through there. And Doc did things for the young people that no one else was doing. I mean, he was a professional person, and my understanding is to get his pharmacy, he had to go in with a white man to get that done, but then it was really his place. He also did scholastic things. He gave kids money to go to school and things like he would raise money and give kids money to go to school. But he started doing just more and more things in the community. And a lot of the entertainment that came to Wheeling came through Doc White. And he didn't have his entertainment coming through the community, the area where black people live. He was one of the first ones to take African Americans to the White Palace. And we had concerts and dances and everything at the White Palace because of Doc White. And a lot of famous entertainers came through here because of Doc White. He was just a mover and a shaker in the community, a well-remembered fellow.
He was on the Wheeling Housing Authority for many years.
He was, that's right.
A big deal for public housing.
Right. One of the first African Americans to hold board posts and things like that too. Yeah, you had to be on. Yeah, he was for many years on Wheeling Housing Board, which made a lot of decisions and a lot of things a little bit better. Urban renewal effectively wiped out the black community, whether that was intentional or not. However you want it, but that's essentially, because what they did was they bought the homeowners out, and anybody who owns their own home, you know that you're an anchor in your community. rather than a renter. When you think of an anchor in a community, think of the homeowners. Now just imagine if your whole street was decimated and all the homeowners are given money to go buy houses somewhere else, well, they're not going to go buy it. They're going to either go to a better neighborhood or they're going to go to another area. And that's essentially what happened in the 70s with the East Wheeling and Chapel Street community, because it wasn't very thriving. I mean, if you could have seen it back then, it's a lot different than, you don't have that sense of community anymore in Wheeling, I don't think, as far as the African American community goes. You just don't have it, sorry.
Do you remember Martha Banks?
No.
She was a singer and entertainer back in the 40s and 50s. She sang at the Club Diamond and the McClure, and she was had a great voice and entertained a great deal. Some of her lyrics were a little risque, but I think that's why us young guys liked them.
Yeah, we're always trying to find out more history. I mean, I'm a minor historian, I just like history, but it's very interesting, the things, you know. We had a program last night, it was called Back in the Day, and we sat around and we talked about the different areas, because South Wheeling used to be an African-American neighborhood, you know, back in the day. And they talked about where they lived, where folks lived, and the stores that were owned, and the businesses and all that. And we talked a little bit about East Wheeling. East Wheeling's a recent African-American community. It wasn't, you know, always like that. It was initially up in Chapel Street and that. I was just looking through some of these things, and when you look at back, this is back in the 1920s, I believe, this information. And the population, the estimated black population in Wheeling was 3,000 people, similar to what it is today. The estimated property holding was $150,000, which back in 1920 was a good bit of money. So the African American community was quite prosperous. There were 5 ministers, 4 doctors, 1 dentist, 2 lawyers, 14 teachers, 1 music teacher, 1 editor, and 1 embalmer. And I venture to say, if I went down that list today, we might have come up in ministers, but we certainly only have about 3 teachers, 3 African American teachers in the whole Ohio County. There are no black music teachers, there are no black editors. Is there still a black? Mr. Brown's gone. Yeah, but I mean, the whole thing never got. There aren't any black lawyers with the demise of Bishop Pitts. And Dr. Houston's gone. So we have no black dentists. Maybe 1 black doctor at Wheeling Hospital, unless he's not the lead.
A black one down here, the urology place.
Okay, we have 2 black doctors, and there's a host of ministers. We also had 1 newspaper, 1 hotel, 3 restaurants, 3 ice cream parlors, 4 barber shops, 5 shoe shining parlors, a newsstand, our repair shops, general transfer service, there were 8. Billiard and parlors, there were 3, house cleaning contractors, 3, and I don't know what a close-to-main contractor is, but there was 2 of those in Decatur. Unfortunately, I don't think Wheeling's keeping up with the promise that it had before. I don't know why that is, but the demise in the neighborhoods, I think, had something to do with it. Certainly urban renewal and different things that have happened over the years. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make a comment regarding black lawyers, because there are a number of black lawyers that are in this town where they work for larger law firms. Like, for example, I work at Order, I'm an attorney. There are a number of black attorneys in the town, but because I guess, you know, they don't have shingles soiled down. So there has been, I know it's, there are quite a few of them at Order, and there are at other law firms too, but usually those are law firms that are headquartered someplace else, but we're here.
Okay, good. That's good to know, because one of the things we've lamented quite a bit for the last few years was not having a large professional base or a large supporting system, because in order for a community to thrive, you have to have something to support that community. You need black businesses, and you need, you know, all of the services that go along with it, physicians and dentists and attorneys and all that sort of thing, because then your black community starts to suffer because you don't have it. So, and then when one community suffers, guess what happens? Everybody else suffers too, so we're all interconnected. I have 10 minutes left, so I'd like to do questions and answers, or I can expound on things that I have marked.
Black newspapers, I didn't realize what was that, and are there any left?
They're already left, and the Hilltop Foyer was printed by the Lincoln School kid. That was one. The McClure House had some of those businesses that I told you about. And let me see if I can find the, I don't know the name of the newspaper, but I can you put that on my list to find out? I don't know the name of the newspaper, but I know that there was one. I know that there was one. Other questions, comments? I can expound. Yes, ma'am.
In the 1980s, from 1980 to 1989, I taught at the historically black college in Savannah, Georgia. And I was privileged to get to know blacks in a way I never had as colleagues. And one of the great ironies, and I'm reminded of it when you talk about how the professional community, the professional black community seems to have shrunk in Wheeling. One of the great ironies that my colleagues would tell me was that as much as they hated the segregated schools that most of them had grown up in, as my boss is now 80, I'm 72, so we're looking at people probably between the ages of 60 and 80. One of the great ironies to them was that as much as they hated those integrated schools in Savannah, Georgia, many of them had very dedicated and gifted teachers. And when the schools were integrated, a lot of that got lost. And of course, one reason for that was a very positive one. There were now professions open to talented blacks that weren't open before 1970, let's say, approximately. So it sounds like in Wheeling something similar happened, that the loss of the neighborhoods that you mentioned and the loss of some of the community churches. I think the churches are still there, probably still very strong, but there's a real irony in that if you think about it.
There it is, and I've heard that said by, I went to school by the time integration was supposedly fully complete, but I've heard a lot of people who are a little older than me say that they missed that. A lot of people who went to Lincoln, for instance, did not want to listen to each other because the teachers weren't so dedicated to the students, and they were paid less. They were paid, even this is across the board, the teachers in the African American schools were paid less, students were given less. The books were old. Some of the books they had, they sent for 5 and 6 years old when they got them, and their teachers were paid less, but the teachers were still very dedicated. And a lot of those kids who came out of school were really well educated due to the teachers, and some of them, moved on to other schools if they were lucky, but they were still paid lesser wages. But I've heard a lot of people say that integration was not necessarily the best thing that could happen. Separate but equal would have been better on some instances, I think, if it had ever gotten to equal pay. It's unfortunate that it never did. No, I know what you're saying. But I get what you're saying.
And I think what people would say was one of the great problems was that there was very little money put into the black schools.
Right.
So the physical conditions were often really deplorable, but the teaching was apparently very strong.
Right.
And another little footnote from my experiences in Savannah, a close friend of mine who's now 64 years old told me once that when he was a boy in Savannah, Georgia, his granny taught him not to look at white women. I mean, he's just a little boy, 4 or 5 years old, at the bus stops when she would take him downtown and so forth, because that was potentially going to be a flag that,
Right.
might get into trouble.
Well, that's true here. I mean, the instructions of African, if you have a son who's African American, you still give him instructions. I'm in my 50s, like I said, I gave my son growing up instructions on what to do and what not to do, where to go and where not to go. Now, my kids pretty much think they fit in until racism hits them. They're pretty good until something racist happens, so then they're shocked and surprised because they grew up in a different era. But, we especially still give our young males instruction on behavior and what you can do and what you can't do. They don't always listen. But we do have to get, and it's a sad commentary on society when I have to tell my son to be careful what you do, who you talk to, where you go. But I have to do that myself. So, but even though this is the greatest country in the world, I always say that it's the greatest country in the world. It was built for free on the backs of African Americans. And until until we realize that and embrace that fact and move forward, it's never going to change. But we have to do that. We have to bring everybody up to the same level. We have to keep that level playing field you always hear me talk about. Once we get that level playing field, then our moving forward or moving backward will be on us and the people, not on anybody stopping us. That's the way I feel. Questions or comments in the back?
I would just like to say, I really think that these type of programs are very good, especially, to make people aware, and I'm glad that I'm here. I'm an ex-Washingtonian, so I have a whole different perspective, because I grew up where we're taught Black history, we're taught Black, literature, and because basically at that time, from the 60s forward, we had Black mayor and what have you, but it is just a sort of like a culture shock in a way, to think, because I always learn about West Virginia, pulled away because, they didn't want to be involved in slavery. To hear you all say this, it's just an eye-opening experience to me, because this, and I realize, because I have lived in other places, but I realize that this still is pervasive, even today in areas, once you leave the urban areas where you have a huge amount of Black people. So, as I said, I'm just very glad to be here, and I'm glad to, hear perspective and hear what people are saying.
And it was West Virginia State radar session, you all know, and it was a very tough battle. And Margaret's a story about the West Virginia, but it wasn't about slavery and other things. Slavery wasn't the only thing, but it was about the slavery issue that why we're even in existence today. We're a southern state, but we're so far north, in Wheeling that people kind of forget that. But it's still, I think there's still an ongoing battle in the state and in the panhandle of race relations and how we feel about it. Karen wanted to say something.
First of all, to the lady that's right behind Joan, it wasn't just in Georgia that it happened. My mother graduated from Blessed Martin School probably 1954, 55.
She graduated from where?
Blessed Martin was a Black, and we learned about ourselves at home, thank God.
We did too.
But to her, segregation was the beginning and the end for this Black community here. Because even though it was, it was supposed to be about equality, which we've yet to get to yet, it broke down the Black community. And she just did not like it. She'd go to Blessed Martin with Black people all her life, and that's the way she liked it, and it worked. For the lady that's from Washington, just the same culture shock that she had when you came here is the same one I had when I went to Morgan State University. It was between Morgan and Howard, and I went there specifically to learn about myself because I was the only Black that graduated in my classroom in Central. And I knew from being where I was, when my parents were educated, well-spoken, that we could be the only people in America that could speak and read and write. So they allowed me to go that far away from home so that I could get in touch with myself, which was the best thing that ever happened. I knew I was Black, loved being Black, but going there let me know that it was okay, So I understand.
Yeah,
when you come here and you see it, I mean, the best way to put it is these people are still backwards.
Something,
Yeah,
we had to go sometimes away from home to find out.
Okay, to be Black. So I can appreciate you 1,000%.
But please, if nothing else, read some more. There's some excellent books up here, but you can always contact us at the YWCA and find out more books and more interesting things. Pick up an Ebony and a Jet once in a while. See what's going on in another part of the community. I read magazines and I have to learn about everything that happened to y'all's history my whole life. So I wish that we could get it more in the school system so when we have the kids coming up in the lower grades and they hear something positive, because my husband is a music teacher at CA House, and he was really struggling with doing that. And I said, you need to do it. Not because he's an excellent musician, which he is, but because the kids that come to CA House don't interact with anybody African American but myself. And he's a positive influence on these kids. And that's kind of like where you have to get. You have to put African Americans in a positive light for people coming up to see us in a positive light. If it's always negative, you're going to have negative thoughts about us. So you have to put it in a positive light. And I tell him when he struggled about it because he wanted to go back to school, I said, no, do that now because that's where the Lord puts you right now. To be an influence on those kids, not to teach them piano, drums, and everything else you teach them, but to show them an African American man is a positive role model. And that's when I'm going to end, because that's the way I try to live my life, just as a positive African-American woman, just trying to be a positive influence in my community. So I thank you so much for listening. Thank you for having me.